Welcome to the No Show. This is not a show. I am not a host, Alex Winston, but this is my guest, Jim Kenny. Jim, welcome to the No Show.
Well, thank you so much. And you know what? I'm a no guest too.
Yeah, we're not professionals here. We're just having a good time. Jim, you're a Professor Emeritus of Marketing, um, but you ended up as a sales trainer. So, marketing background, ended up in sales. How does a marketing academic end up being a sales trainer?
Mainly because that marketing academic was invited to speak at a conference, the Transportation Emeritus Association, who long ago was called the TBCA, the Transportation Brokers Conference of America. I had done my research on non-asset-based sales. Gentleman walked down and said, "Man, that was really good. Have you ever brokered a load?" And I said, "No." He goes, "I didn't think so. I'll make you a deal. If you'll fly out and broker for me this summer and then write a sales training manual." And that's literally how I started it, on the desk for 4 or 5 hours a day and then worked in the afternoon. So I broker in the morning and then in the afternoon would convert that stuff to material. And it grew from there. And
And you've been touching this stuff since the 90s, right?
that interaction occurred in 1995, the
Okay.
summer of '95.
And
I was
so,
very young, had no skin cancers yet, and had dark brown hair. So how's that for the change?
yeah. So a lot of people in our industry are young, right? Tell me what it looked like back in the 90s, and what's changed, what's different today.
you know, and Alex, you're a great age to have said both sides, and we joked about how law school's changed for you and your career. Same thing. The concept of what you did when you came out of law school and started doing deals and then got into buying businesses and then partnering in the brokerage, how you do it has changed, but the concept of successful business hasn't. Same thing with truckload brokerage, to be quite honest. We had fax machines, we had file card systems, and then slowly converted to databases and so forth. But the concept of what we did, we got loads from shippers, we sold them to carriers, managed that transaction. So back then, a really crazy day is a broker might have moved 3 loads, and just because of all the paperwork. But the biggest change is really the technology and concepts and the speeds of which we can do everything now. So it's not uncommon today for a broker to be able to move 15, 17 loads. So not that much different from your own career, Alex, to be quite honest. It's just the tools and the technology have really enhanced the ability to move more freight per head.
Yeah. Yeah, and I know you've consulted for many freight companies, the giants, biggest, some of the biggest in the whole country, right? All the way
Right.
down to some very small, you could call them almost startup brokerages, right? And so what's the difference? Is there a different approach from your standpoint in those two? Are there things that big guys get right that small guys get wrong and vice versa? Can you shed some light on that for me?
There's a few things. I've had the pleasure of signing NDAs with over 220 brokerages in the last 35 years, and I've physically been in well over 100. And the first thing I'd like to get out is that even the largest brokerages have niches. Now, they might have 4 or 7 of them, but they've got clearly defined niches. So if you took a $2 billion broker that I know, okay, 70% of the freight, okay, comes from 2 major niches. The other 30% comes from 15 other commodities. So you take those two, and that's like, so the first thing is, even the largest guys, you go to the smaller firms, and the way they move up is they become very good at 1 niche, 2 niches, 3 niches. But moving FAK, actually, if you're changing all kinds of freight, those are the guys that get stuck, Alex. They really are. They do not ever scale. So that's the first thing. Even the biggest guys have niches. The second thing is, okay, the concept of working on your business versus working in your business. So the gentlemen and ladies who I've seen blow up their companies eventually get quote off the desk. They're no longer in there at 6:30 in the morning okay, checking email and booking loads, calling their customers. Okay, they do let that go. Okay? Now that doesn't mean they quit selling and working with them. Just the opposite. Again, another very large brokerage. Okay, the CEO, okay, he has a sales calendar that most people just drool, but he visits, okay, every quarter he has a rule. I'm going to visit 8 customers. Now, granted, those 8 customers do more business than most brokerages do in 10 years, but nevertheless, he is right there. So sales and relationships are managed very differently at the top level than at the bottom. The bottom level, the women and men, okay, they're still actively moving freight. That's a big difference. They're actively talking to those guys in the warehouses or the trucks, or they're trying to get the next bid done. So number one, we have niches. Number two, they really are working on strategy, relationships, external sales ideas. So the, how are we going to get more carriers? How are we going to handle those carriers? How are we getting a niche tied to market? So that's the second. And third one is the automation. Yeah, everybody gets a technology and it's been beaten to death. But what has to be said about that is the execution. When I was getting my MBA in the 80s, it's during the Reagan years, and there was some legitimacy to this. We were all criticized because they were called quant jocks. There's an overemphasis probably of analytics. But if you look at what would happen in the mid to the late 80s and how that first segued into the 90s, people really became analytical folks. And if you could execute on that, so my career jumped because while so many people in marketing loved, okay, the psychology behind it, the consumer behavior, okay, the advertising, okay, that was the hot thing. Okay, but actually crunching the data. So market analysts, data analysts, that really drove how we built software systems, how we use them. So if you look at that, those would be the three big things. Number one, a niche. Number two, you have to build your team around, okay, so that they're moving the freight and you're working on strategy and longer term projects. You're not involved in day to day. If you're still moving freight, you need to figure a way to get out of it. And I now realize when you start to expedite all, Max is doing that, you were you were like every other CEO, but honestly, I'm gonna embarrass you a little bit. When's the last time you dispatched a load, Alex? And I hope you can say I
Oh,
can't remember.
um, years and years ago.
Thank
So,
you very much. So you sort of made my point. But I have another question. When's the last time you talked to a critical customer?
uh, all the time.
Yeah,
Yeah.
so point one, right, versus point two. Point three, when's the last time you sat down with your team, you guys talked about, okay, we need to build an agent or an AI tool that can do this task.
Yeah. So we're doing that all the time as well, as far as
So you
strat.
made my 3 point, and
Yeah.
that's really how people. So if you started brokerage today, great for you. There's still tons of opportunity, Alex, in my opinion, but you have to keep those three things in mind. What is my niche? What is it that I do, okay, that other people can't or fewer people do? There's 17,000 competitors. That's great. But what if you do something that you only have 700 or 1,700 competitors? That certainly makes life easier, right?
Right.
So that that was a long answer, but it breaks down to those three things. Does that make
Yeah. No.
sense?
Yeah. It makes perfect sense. Let's talk about salespeople and sales skills. You've said flat out, the born salesman is a myth.
Absolutely true.
Tell us why.
When somebody this would happen at the university all the time. We would get calls from corporations, and somebody would say, "Hey, I need that. I need a born salesman. I need a kid that's got a perfect sales personality." And you just want to cringe. Personality has zero correlation to sales success. So one more time, I mean, absolutely minuscule. What they're really saying is when I need a good sales personality, okay, they're asking for two major things. Okay? I need an individual who has exceptional intercommunication skills and exceptional emotional intelligence. here's what comes out of that. So when somebody says they need to be good personality, we're really talking about skills that you learn. So let's go to the communication side. Graduate school, law school, any advanced education teaches you to deconstruct the issue. Good people who listen and ask not just any question, but the right type of questions, are basically deconstructing the buyer's problems. And they're listening and figuring out, how do I solve that? So the second part, the emotional intelligence, is when you start to get close to this situation, you're going to alienate them. So we call those objections. Well, there's nothing wrong with those. It's how you respond to the listening and the question that follows them. So when we teach, again, this is wrong. Well, here's how you remove an objection. The sales rep cannot move the objection. He can only ask the questions that helps the buyer, the prospect, understand, hey, this is my issue, and I'm making this up because I don't want to really admit what my true concern is, or this is so big, I'm just shutting you down. So again, the concept of the born salesperson has been refuted by dozens of academic articles in the Journal of Marketing, the Journal of Marketing Research, the Journal of Personal Selling and Sales Management, the Journal of Psychology. There are dozens of studies. So, Alec, if you're not, as we went and collected data from your sales team, and you've got 12, 15 people now, bundled it all together, why they're successful, and submitted it to an academic journal, they got no. We accepted that 25, 30 years ago. So, what does matter in sales training is you actually can teach people how to listen better. And the most important skill that was learned, and this really goes back to Rackham, Ruff, DeVincentis, before, just a bunch of people who did this work in the late 80s or early mid 90s to even early 2000s, that 15-year period. It's how you ask the question, the framing of the question, and the category of the question. That's where the best salespeople really succeed. And the funny thing is, that's a learned skill. Now, how do we learn things? Either you can be taught and you adjust, or Alex, as you know, the skill of hard knocks. You just keep getting knocked down. Either you quit and walk away, which is why sales has such a horrible turnover, or there's that really person with high emotional intelligence, like, there's got to be a different way. How can I do this differently? And that group of individuals, which is very rare, adapts. So that's where sales training's really changed. Brokerage is a great example for that. Okay? You get beat up on the phone a lot when you first come in the industry.
Yeah. So if I'm hiring and I want to hire a good salesperson, really what I look for is not, do they have the personality that makes me think they're going to be good at selling? It's, do they have good communication skills, right? And then you said emotional intelligence. That's a hard thing, I think, for some people to judge, especially in a application job interview situation, right? So, any tips on that? Like, how do I
Okay.
know somebody has a good
Two quick
emotional?
tips. Okay. I would go online and grab Angela Ducksworth's grit test. So it turns out that fortitude or grit, the ability to, okay, get up, dust yourself off, and try again. So just because you failed doesn't mean you don't have the skill set. So grit is a great production, what we call fortitude. But the most common thing that people skip is, do they have good logical analytical skills? And there's some great little tests. So we actually tried this test in the late 1996, 97, 98. And it actually worked out as we since adjusted. I can't tell you even now because it's coming. But are you familiar with the little game called Sudoku?
Oh
It's a
yeah.
little 9 by 9 puzzle where you put numbers in. We determined that a level 3 Sudoku, okay, equated to about, okay, 115 IQ or higher. We found this. We basically said, hey, you have 3 minutes to do this. And the CEO and the HR director thought we were insane. I said, let's just try it. And what I've done is, with the best salespeople, they were really good at quickly doing that. You laugh because it's just a numbers thing, but that's exactly what brokerage and most problems are. Can I deconstruct it? Can I slice, dice, look for patterns. So there is now a lot of really cool online material that helps you determine, does somebody have, okay, that basic skill set of mastering deduction and induction and then putting it together. You laugh, but I'm telling you, there is some really cool stuff online now. People are no longer using Sudoku tests, much more scientifically, but that's the concept. Does that make any sense at
It
all?
it makes a little bit of sense. I'll have to look into it a little more to see what's out there. Um, we've got to change our hiring practices based on your advice. Um, so,
Well,
Jim,
I
let me
throw
ask.
one more thing in here. So
Yeah,
here's an idea. What's one thing that every salesperson, whether you're selling 10,000 loads or 100 loads or one look, what's something every sales rep faces in trying to get business and or okay, negotiating with somebody? What's that one challenge?
I mean, number one is people just don't want to give you time, right? But
Okay, very good. So let's say so there's going to be a robot. What's what I call a Heisman Trophy, right? You see the Heisman, okay? So what we do is look for, can you see how they'd handle, okay, a roadblock, a Heisman, a stiff arm, and communicate in an area that has nothing to do, because all of life has this. So here's what we give them, a little case study. And if you go Google case study interviews, you're going to see a bunch of the stuff. So I'll say to you, you're 23-year-old Alex Winston, okay? You don't have a law degree, you're not a CM, you haven't run this company. So you're 23-year-old Alex, right? He's undergraduate. I'll say, hey, Alex, here's a case study I'd like you to read. It's going to be about 2 paragraphs, okay? And I'd like you to write an email response to it and no more than 3 to 5 sentences. Now, the case study is, okay, you're driving your car. You are the 4th car through the light. It's a green light, and some car T-bones you in the side. You fought, nobody's hurt. They're only traveling 50 miles an hour. They hit you on the passenger side. But unfortunately, there's $4,500 worth of damage right to your door. Now, the insurance company turns down your claim. He's like, time out. He did it. What? So you have to write a letter back to the insurance company, say, please reconsider. You've made a mistake here. You've got video footage from the camera plus the police report. Okay. And you get a note that says, dear Mr. Winston, I'm so sorry, but Allstate or State Farm, whoever is rejecting your claim. How do you handle this? What does that case study force that young applicant to do?
oh, it forces them to understand a problem, right? And strategize around how to persuade someone to deal with it a certain way, right?
So, what would a bad answer be, in your opinion, a young person would write?
Probably just you got this wrong and you need to fix it, right?
Yeah, they go, hey, you've made a mistake. You can't. We so what we do is we eliminate the applicant who goes on the offensive. Dear Alex, you've really screwed this up. There's a police report attached, plus the video. You guys are responsible for fixing my car.
Yeah.
So we look for, is it assertive? Okay, overly assertive? Is it finger pointing? Is it confrontational? But what if you got this email? What is it? Okay, dear Alex, thank you. I received your letter of June 1st, 2026, and I have attached 3 documents. Number 1, the police report for May 15th, 2026. Number 2, the video provided by, okay, Asheville, North Carolina Police Department. This intersection is 23rd and Main. And finally, a copy of my contract with a highlighted agreement. Realize you're busy and there might have just been some error in the analysis, but please note that it was the 4th car through, right? This and this. However, there may be something I'm unaware of. Please provide your view of how you arrived at this. And if we could talk Wednesday, that would be most grateful. Who gets the job, 1 or 2? I mean,
Of course, the second one,
yeah.
right? Yeah.
Why? What did the second guy do that the first guy didn't do?
The second guy understood psychology better, in my opinion. But um,
And that's what we call emotional intelligence.
yeah,
The ability to handle confrontation in a calm, civil way to start a discussion of resolving an issue. So it could have just been, come on, as an insurance company, how many of those things, like, it could have just been nothing more than what, Alex? A
just
true administrative
automated
error.
SOP. This is what we do, right?
Yeah.
Nobody really looked into it.
Yeah. So yeah, that's a great question. That's really how we see training and hiring changing and coaching even. Okay. We're teaching them to realize that almost any confrontation, you hope not, but any conversation could possibly turn confrontational. You hope not, but I'm just curious, how many customers have you talked to in the last 6 months?
More than I can count,
I'm gonna
So
interview you on your own show. Give me a
yeah,
or
no, I mean,
give me a
I would
number.
I would say probably let's go with 2 or 3 customer meetings a week, probably,
Okay.
right?
For the 6 months, that's 26. So we basically hit got
Yeah.
60. Okay, we'll just round it. Okay, 60. Okay. Was every one of those meetings happy?
No, not every one of those meetings is happy, and sometimes there are things
How
you
did we move forward when there's a disconnect, Alex?
I guess I use that emotional intelligence, Jim. And so
Yeah.
but here's the thing, when you've done what I've done, right, in the past, the little problems in freight seem very small compared to what past experience is, right? So
Okay.
I'm a recovering lawyer, and when you're a lawyer, you deal with everybody's biggest problem every day, right? And so it's easy to stay calm, right?
Absolutely. As a recovering academic, what are the odds if I was a tenured full professor at a university, what are the odds that conflict was a normal give and take, whether it's faculty meetings, student interactions, curriculum meetings? Lord,
Yeah.
universities are built, not just law schools. What about dealing with a rejected article that you've sent to double blind review and you get these things and then they've ripped it to shreds and you have to respond. Okay.
Yeah.
So,
I mean, experience teaches you, right?
right. And so it's unfair for a 23-year-old just out of school, but it turns out that you've already acquired those skills of resilience, communication. Those get fostered from a very early age. I could be mistaken, but if you ever took when you're a little kid, my children had these pet all the time. You know the big wiffle ball bats, big purple bat. It's a big fatty end, a big giant yellow ball. So when the kids were little, we'd go in the yard and hit this. So they were 4 and 2, right? Turns out that the 2-year-old picked it up one time and she thought it'd be a wonderful toy to bop her big sister in the head with. Okay. we, so you have to mediate that. You
Right.
laugh, right? But you get the kids. So as you grow, people forget you've been taught or assimilated how to handle conflict in a conversation. And the best lawyers actually don't yell and scream and threaten. There's some great law research on best lawyers. They are brilliant in their ability to stay calm and listen and come back with a question. The best salespeople in any industry have these almost the exact same skills. It is not uncommon to find top salespeople in other industries who attended law school and maybe didn't pass the bar, or they were lawyers and couldn't stand actually practicing law for a white shoe law firm in New York, and they've moved into other worlds. The one thing that comes from academics and law and any graduate school is, right, the ability to deconstruct, listen, ask questions. And the calmer you are about that, the more likely you're going to be a top notch enterprise salesperson or salesperson in general.
Yeah. Yeah, I can see that. So some say cold calling is dead. What say you, Jim Kenny?
I say yes, and it's been dead for a long time, even in the late 90s with you get on the web. So you say, "Oh, I've got this list of prospects." I walked through the grocery store. That's what the boss told me to do. And you picked up something, Old El Paso. You go back and get on your computer, and go, "Oh, here's Old El Paso. How many products do they have?" And find out. I mean, everything was the so even then, I could call you up in 1998 and say, "Hey, Alex, this is Jim Kinney at Expedite All. I just saw you guys launched a new okay, salsa, okay, mango peach something. How well is that something like that selling these days?" You're not expecting that question. You answer it, so it's pretty good. So that's why I call. I'm glad to know the volume's up. Any chance you need some capacity out of Newark, New Jersey,
Yeah.
from your Newark facility into North or South Carolina. So yeah, you didn't have to call out and say, "Hey, this is Jim Kinney with Expert." Oh, we're three. So the biggest change in selling is back then, cold calling was all about feature benefit. It was always about we called it Italian opera. Me, 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 me. You open the call talking about your brokerage, where you're located, what you could do. The shipper doesn't care then, and they don't care now. But yeah, cold calling with today's tools, you should not ever have to make a cold call. You can make it worse as semi-tepidly warm call, but you should be able to make it very warm to hot calls with today's tools.
You've trained countless salespeople. What is the number one mistake you still see salespeople making all the time?
Feature benefit selling, trying to develop rapport.
Okay. Yeah. Instead of going with the method you teach, right? Which
Right.
is be prepared and ask the right questions, right?
If I don't know you, come on, you're the president of a company, so no humility here. How many sales firms from software companies try to get through to you every quarter to sell you some method of software tool that is used by a 3PL?
Um, eh, hundreds probably, right? Hundreds.
Okay. And how many of them say, even to you, and experience say, "Hey, Alex, this is Jim Kinney with XYZ Software. How are you doing today?"
It's a common it's a common way to open for sure.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. It's the worst way to open. It's First of all, rapport, okay, is actually the fourth thing that occurs. If you are a professional, that earns you major credibility. Okay. Professionalism gives you the chance to display, okay, and develop, demonstrate some sort of knowledge. That gets you trust, and that, of course, finally gets you rapport. Okay. A guy, University of Florida, I just blanked on his name. I'd like to be able to give him credit, but okay, Journal of Marketing Research in the late 90s basically found out in studying, okay, in B2B selling versus B2C. So when you go in to go buy a new set of golf clubs, we have a tendency to develop rapport and a face-to-face interaction, but that's expected. But on the phone, rapport development actually comes last. So if you are professional, that develops credibility. Credibility develops trust. Trust develops rapport. So that's a learned skill. You can teach that. You can role play that. So that is the biggest thing we still see is that people, "Hey, how are you doing today?" You don't know them. So what if I simply say, "Hey, good morning, Alex. This is Jim with XYZ Software. Congrats. I saw that Expedite All just announced a partnership with XYZ Logistics. That's really cool. Do you have a tool that by any chance helps you get your two systems to communicate better and double checks transactions to reduce API error?" And, feel like really that exists. So we say, well, as a matter of fact, okay, if you're handling at least 3,000 loads a month or more, our software might be able to automate that and reduce your rebook error rate.
Yeah, and
Now
as
I have your attention because your
yeah.
brain's going, "Hey, he's asking about a problem. B, he's asked me if I have a load volume at that level, then there's a chance. So I've been professional. That gives me credibility. That gives me trust. So now we're going to have a conversation. And I still don't know how you're doing today.
Yeah, yeah, and you get a very different response, right?
Right.
When you ask me how I'm doing, do you know what I think as a prospect? How can I get this guy off the phone?
That's
Right?
okay. Now, let's say that you talk to this guy 4 or 5 times because you do, I'm going to make up a number. You do 12,000 transactions a month, right? That's obviously above the 3,000 threshold. Two, you do have interface issues, just like any shipper does with a carrier. Okay. People are trying to get their loads. Okay. You do have some interface issues. Some people are not using API. Their stuff, they want to do it as EDI. They want to fax it or they want to send it to an Excel file. Well, if you had a software tool that could fix that handshake problem, okay, you had it, you could have give it to them and that, like, man, that would solve hand entering. And all of a sudden you realize 3,300 to 3,700 loads a month. Well, how long does it take to enter each load a month or each transaction? You go, oh, about 3 minutes, 3,300 of them. That's 9,000 minutes. You start doing the math like, dang, that's a lot of labor. This might be worth paying $10,000 a month for because I'm paying $30,000 a month in labor. Can I reach? So obviously you're pursuing these conversations. You're not going to buy it in the first call. So by the time you've had your fifth or sixth call, it's become more conversational. It's not as professional. So you're like, hey, Jim, I'm really sorry. I've got to cut this short today. I've got to go pick up my child. We got to get to after school golf event. You go, great, cool. Okay. Well, I hope, he or she does better than I do and keeps it in the short grass. Good luck. When can we talk again? Or what can I send you? So rapport occurs in just normal conversation interaction. When you force it, then you've broken the law of credibility. And what happens when you break credibility with anybody? What happens to your trust?
It's gone.
Okay. So if
Yep.
you're professional in the beginning in a B2B selling, that gets credibility. Credibility gets you trust, and then somebody that lets their guard down. So I know you've heard me harp on this before, but it's the single biggest thing I see. So he says, I'd like you to listen to this guy sell or this woman. I'm like, oh, just that tweak would improve. They're making 50 critical calls a day to major shippers. Let's let's get it right.
Yeah.
How do you feel when somebody does actually treat you with respect? Be honest. When you get a phone call and that call is aimed at Alex Winston, president of Expedite All, and you know,
I mean, it just feels like a normal interaction, right? You're not annoyed. I think
oh,
that's the thing that I get when I'm being feel like I'm being sold to, right? I just feel annoyed, right? And so let's have a real conversation and not a fake conversation is kind of what's going on in my head, right? And so but it's hard to have a real conversation sometimes from the salesperson's perspective, right? You have to work, you have to
oh,
do some
sure.
planning, right? So but yeah, no, I'm totally there with you, Jim, on all that. Can I ask you a question about changes, recent changes that you're seeing both in sales and in marketing? What are you seeing?
Um, so on the sales side, spot brokerage isn't going away. Okay, I'd really want to make that clear. But how shippers are handling it has changed significantly. So let's say that they're moving 70% of their freight through contracts and 30 through the spot market. So that 30, okay, they used to just put out on boards. The biggest single change is they're trying to get 30% and like, all right, to my guys that are already moving my contract freight, I might as well just keep doing business with them. So I'm going to make a requirement, okay? I move 90 loads in this lane. They got to move 100. And once they hit that 100, then, and they might lose a little money, then they get the chance to play with a spot freight. So what I'm seeing is that there's a massive shift from the spot market being cut from a shipper having 25 vendors 5 years ago, they've got 5, 7, and nobody gets to play on the spot board unless you're doing contract freight. It was not uncommon, even pre-COVID, and during, right after COVID, is say, anybody can get in there, we got to get this freight moved, which made sense in 2020, 2021, second half of 2020 when the market opened, 21 and 22. But that has changed significantly. And even this year, I've continued to see, okay, spot freight getting pulled from brokers and it's going away. It's not, it's being pulled from your access and it's going internally. 2, they're continually trying to reduce the amount of transactional or spot freight that's available. So instead of having 70-30, they can get it to 75-25. And you cannot eliminate spot freight. Okay. So again, it's not going away. There's still going to be billions of dollars worth of it. So that's one thing. In order to get that, you have to have tools. So that moves through the tech side. So they're wanting digital dashboards, reports. They want to be able to look. The visibility and the accountability is omnipresent. And that is where the big guys are crushing the low end of the market, the under 5 million. Okay? They just, and it's not that like you can't develop this stuff or make it available. It's not everything costs a fortune. Some of the stuff is pretty bad. A lot of CRM systems have outstanding management reporting systems you put together to get right out to the shipper. So it's not like you have to be a $600 million firm, $3 billion or $20 billion. It's just, did you think what they want? So that would be the thing. The other is the use of agents. The last 6 to 8 months, I've been involved in half a dozen to maybe a dozen of these, and this is staggering. The marketing agencies that would come in and be able to do these great programs, and they were very cool, don't get me wrong, okay? Now you can write an AI agent that can do, which they want to charge you 10, 15, 20 grand a month for this, and you can get a really good CRM system interface with the agents to do it, and now you can do it for 1,500, 2,000 a month. Let's see, 20 grand, 2 grand. We're talking, that's a 90% decrease. Okay.
Yeah, and a
And
huge budget
so
item too, right?
that has been
Yeah.
a staggering change of the quality of marketing tools. So now let's think about how that's customized. Okay. So sure, we could get all these marketing emails sent out. Okay. Let's do a little math. Efficiency, effectiveness. Efficiency is how many direct contacts you make. Effectiveness is what is the response rate, what gets said in that. So if you can do, this is a sucker question, so you know what's happening, okay? So if you can do 500 of these emails a day or 100, which would you rather do?
500.
500, you got to do the math. Yeah, okay. So what if I can get a 2% response rate on 500?
It's okay. It's what, 10 responses?
Yeah, okay. What if I could get a 9% response rate on 100?
It's great. Still less than 10.
Yeah, okay. What if I could get a 30% response rate?
Yeah, that'd be perfect.
Well, how do you do that? An AI agent. So let's say that I've got a marketing system that goes out there and identifies all this really cool stuff, how many hits I'm getting and all that kind of stuff. Or I could take a known database that matches my exact target market. Okay. Now, people, I love this. Here's where I'm getting old. We call it an ICP these days. Okay? My ideal customer profile. Okay, folks, okay, that is a target market, Alex. Okay, a target market is defined by, okay, it's 2 words to say 3. The ideal customer profile is what you want perfectly. That's a very small number of things. But your target market, that's easy to do. So let's say that you're going after refrigerated freight. Well, that's a nice big target market, but we could break it down. You got refrigerated, let's break it down. There's either frozen or fresh. Oh, it's frozen. We go after ice cream, manufacturers of frozen goods, or we want produce. So now we've made one cut, okay, frozen or fresh, or frozen or produce, and then we just take it and we cut it again. Well, the ideal customer profile says, hey, look at your top 5 customers. I think that you might have 5 variables. Listen, okay, but 90% of it you can get in 3 variables. So if I can get reefer, fresh, and berries, I can then go and get, all right, the California Strawberry Growers Association, the Florida Citrus Growers, the Idaho Potato. Are you with me?
Hmm.
I can get that list of potential, and then I have an agent that goes and does their little magic and can take that data and I can write very sophisticated, customized emails. All this is automated, Alex, but it takes a little more effort. I only get 100 of those out a day, but I get a 30% response versus 502 because I'm sending the generic. So what we're seeing is the customization of the contact drives response rate incredibly,
Yeah.
even at this. So I'm not saying that you shouldn't do database marketing at all, but you should do customizable because now you know the core passive retarder market. And I'm not saying don't chase your ICP, okay? But if you looked at it and say, all right, there's 5,872 strawberry prospects here. And then you did go your IC profile and look at this and say, well, if I match that to that, well, I only have 182. Really? So you're going to skip out the other 5,643 strawberry shippers? No, you're not. There's some issues there. So maybe you cut out the ones that geographically are a good fit, or you know that there's certain product categories they handle. So that's probably the 2 biggest things that I am seeing is the use of agents coupled with the CRM system, which is changing how I'm not saying that intent data is important. I didn't say that, but what used to be very expensive, you're seeing firms doing now in-house or with some of those resources that they don't have to completely outsource. And all driven by, bots being able to do some very cool, or agents, I'm
Yeah.
sorry. That's an agent solution, not a bot solution. Does that
Yeah.
answer
And
your question, or
it,
that was a little
it,
wordy, but
it does. And we're seeing more and more marketing automation, right? And what we do, and all kinds of automation, what we do actually, right? We're studying it and we're trying to figure out how do we implement it as efficiently as possible, right? And so, yeah, it makes perfect sense. I've
can I
seen
ask
you
you a
go,
question?
yeah, of course.
So you could flip that around. So if you were a broker or a shipper, you could apply that in other ways. So maybe you could apply that to getting more carriers. Maybe you
Right.
could apply that to identifying shippers in specific markets with specific commodities. So I'm not saying that intent data is not valuable, and I'm not saying that ideal customer profiles. Okay, but with the tools available, you can get close and really make more progress faster than if you dive it too deep. You're like, oh, instead of that 5,612, it's 372. Let's customize our contact approach, and we might find out that okay, that there's a better opportunity there.
Yeah.
So
Yeah. Jim, I've seen you on LinkedIn a little bit. You're not super active on there, but you are on there. And you probably noticed something that I noticed on LinkedIn, which is everyone seems to be a sales expert. And and really, it's not a new phenomenon, I think, that people would want to pontificate about sales, right? But it is new that they're doing it publicly where everyone can kind of hear them, right? And so, from your perspective, what's the maybe the worst piece of sales advice that you frequently see, whether it's on LinkedIn or even within a sales organization, that just keeps getting repeated forever, no matter how many times you
okay,
try to crush it?
I'd like to clarify. There's a reason I don't do social media. It has nothing to do with not believing in it. just the opposite. I once had a website when I was at the university, and it overwhelmed me. I love being a sole practitioner, and I have a very clear set of criteria for types of firms I look for. And if you know that, that's great, fine. So for me, LinkedIn just created more work, but I want to stay in contact. So it's a very valuable tool. Absolutely. So if I was a CEO of a brokerage firm or a shipper, I'd definitely be very, very active in social media. So my lack of use of that has nothing to do with my belief in it. But so now let's see. You are correct. I am a hound dog for reading that stuff, and it always puts a big smile on my face. Even now, okay, with all the digital stuff that's available in the training, the number one thing that I see is, okay, it's what I call generic advice that doesn't link to a specific behavior change. So can I give you an example? So if I say to a young lady working for me, let's say her name is Leticia, okay? And she's working for me and doing good. I say, Leticia, listen, I love seeing that your call volume's up. You know, you're doing 40 calls a day. Now you're up to 70. You know, you're not getting much activity yet. You're not quoting much, but you just need to keep trying. Okay. Keep your call volume up and remember to ask those critical questions. All right. So, and then they stop there. So the coaching is on something she shouldn't be getting on an input variable call volume. Okay. And we tell her to keep up the good work and okay, keep asking those critical questions. That's generic advice. We haven't given her behavior change. So anybody who is successful, okay, whether it be the best violinists, okay, who play in top orchestras around the world, the best baseball players, the best golfers, the best singers, you don't get there by accident. Okay, they have these phenomenal behaviors. So the old joke of how to get to Carnegie Hall and it's practice, practice, practice is actually bad advice. How to get to Carnegie Hall, it's perfect practice on behaviors get you there. So what if I say to Leticia, listen, let's dial back your call volume, okay, from 70 to 50 the next 2 weeks. Okay? I want you to focus on every time before you call the phone. I want you to have one or two variables you want to talk about. Do you want to ask about a lane or a product to start the conversation? So, hey, Alex, congratulations on the contract with Whole Foods. Do you guys need any reefer capacity out of that facility in the valley to Texas? So now what I have her doing is instead of saying, how are you doing today or what's going on? I've got her asking about location to location. So what I want her to focus on are the critical behaviors are, okay, very simple.
Mhm.
One, a client-centered fact. It's about the shipper, A to B, okay, and B to start, okay, client-centered question, which starts the conversation. That's all. So the biggest mistake, and you watch I have colleagues who send them to me out of sheer spite. And they go, all right, Jim, okay, rip it to shreds. What are the four things wrong with this? Because I found them, you know? So, and almost always, the number one thing is it's generic advice that doesn't focus on a specific behavior change that increases the likelihood of an outcome. And
Yeah.
I'm seeing really good people do this. I mean,
Well, I think it's
does that make sense?
it
What I'm
makes perfect
suggesting?
sense. And the thing you brought up that I think is counterintuitive for what I would say is a untrained manager, right? Is you said cut your call volume back if you're struggling, right? And a lot of managers are going to do exactly the opposite. They're going to say, well, you're struggling because you're making 50 calls a day and you need to make 100, right? And what does that do? Whatever that untrained behavior is for that salesperson, they're just going to do more of it, right? Um, and so it really is, it's a different way of thinking about it, right? Like, how do we change not activity, but behavior, right?
Right. But what behavior? So I asked Leticia cut from 70 to 50, but what behavior did I ask her to change before she picked up the phone? Do you remember our coaching? I said, find a location to talk about and a product. So,
Hmm.
Alex, is there any chance we could haul some more of those berries for you out of San Bernardino to Dallas? So I
Yeah.
know you have a facility in San Bernardino. I know that there's a likelihood since you're doing business with Whole Foods. I also know that Whole Foods has it. So if I get her to slow down a little bit and
Yeah.
form, hey, what's my client serve fact and my client focused question? She's going to be much better.
Right.
She's going to handle that. So,
And if you tell her more calls, what's she gonna do? She's probably gonna stop pre-call planning altogether, right?
okay. So I had a CEO go ballistic on me on this. They had to do 100 calls a day in the 90s. Hey, they've got all those call reports. And first thing he goes, all right, hey, I asked for call date and everything else. We're sitting in this conference room. I said, all right, here's the first thing I would suggest you guys do. Slash your call, okay, quota by 30%. They went nuts. I heard the F bomb 3 times. I mean, just God, here's the da da da. I said, all right. When everybody calmed down, I said, give me 5 people. Okay. You keep your guys and let me have mine, and I'll fly back in a month. I want to talk to each of them on the phone for 30 minutes once a week. Okay.
It's an A/B test, right?
It's a classic market research. Okay. You guys get the control group, and I've got I've got the test group, right? So the control group, remember, nothing's happened. And we got so I took them from 70 to 60. Okay? And even before I left, they picked the kid. So then we talked about them. I said, don't give me your biggest dogs. Give me some people who've shown some gumption. And then this firm hired 100 people a year. We didn't even get to the end of the month. Okay. I had 3 young women, 2 young men, and by the time I spent an hour and a half with them that Thursday, okay, they were already so much enthusiastic. By the time I left for the next day, okay, they knew exactly what to do differently, at least the fundamentals. Following Wednesday, I spent another 30 minutes with each of them. So 2.5 hours role play with the first young lady, the second young man, young lady, young lady, young man, okay. And then I actually did it again. So I did it Thursday, Wednesday, Friday. So they basically had 2 hours that first Thursday. They had 3 hours of coaching within 1 week. Okay. Their quotes had already started, and it was a good market time. This is again 1998, so things were very different. Okay, we didn't even make it. So I got a call from the chief operating officer, good friend. He goes, Kenny's just freaking furious, and he's got to admit you're right. I said, great. Wait till he gets my bill. I said, you can tell him I said that. The joke is that, but it's true, but it's behavior, Alex. You should knock it down, but if you build the skill and it gets right, then you can take it back up.
Yeah.
It is very counterintuitive, but
It
um,
makes sense though,
when
for
did you
sure.
start playing golf? How old were you?
I was a teenager. I was in
Okay.
high school.
Did by any chance uh, did you ever play musical instrument as a kid either?
A little bit. I
Okay,
obviously play one now quite a
right.
bit.
Okay, so what do good coaching lessons do to your confidence and your morale over the
They
course of even a month?
they absolutely change the way you're conducting yourself,
Okay,
right?
so did you ever take guitar lessons then?
Not really, to be honest with you. Mostly
Yeah.
self-taught.
Okay. What happened if mom and dad had paid for guitar lessons at 13 for 6 months?
I don't know. Maybe I would be in a band or something
Okay.
instead of
How
doing
about
these.
your golf? Okay. Did you ever have golf lessons?
Yeah, I've had golf lessons. Yeah,
Yeah. Okay. How did that help you out?
tremendously. Because when you're swinging a golf club, you can't see what you're doing, but other people can watch you and give you some
Okay.
advice on how to
So
change.
would you ever want a lawyer to handle? Okay. your will or your trust or state work. Pretend you were a lawyer who hadn't gone to law school and had experience with trusts and estates. All they had done was divorces. So then why would you want a salesperson who didn't have any coaches or lessons to be calling up people who had business potential worth, okay, $300,000 in gross margin a quarter?
Yeah. You should
Can
have
you
them
answer
coached
that question
for
for me?
sure.
Why would you?
Yeah, you gotta get them doing the right behaviors to maximize that
Right.
opportunity,
Okay.
right?
So back to the question is personality a predictor of sales success, or is it really communication skills and emotional intelligence and behaviors?
Yeah, it's the second, right? It's emotional intelligence, it's communication skills, and then it's learning how to do the right behaviors, right?
Okay. So then let's go back to marketing. Okay. What if you could write an agent, okay, in Claude or Chat GBT or Google Gemini, or I mean, there's dozens of them. We get that. So no endorsements here, right? But you could write an AI agent that could go out, take those firms on your prospect list that get two or three critical things that you needed, put it into your CRM, formatted that in a very cool, okay, email letter or outline for a phone call that force them into the right behaviors. Okay. What's the potential for improving and making that salesperson's life better, Alex, if you did it that way?
It's great. It's awesome.
Yeah.
So, I'm
So
for it.
I'm a huge fan of AI. Kind of everybody saying, "Oh, it's doing," you know what? It's not. Okay. What it will do is you're going to hire a lot fewer people in these firms. Okay. But you're not going to quit hiring them. Okay. You're going to redeploy the skill set of the good people. You will lose some people. Okay. You really will, because they won't want to change their behavior or their attitude about it. But those who get it, okay, so if there's one sort of thing I think is keep hiring, but find that young 23, 24-year-old who somehow scores big on analytics and they have outstanding communication skills. They do really well on those emotional intelligence tests because that 23-year-old is going to have to be the 34-year-old who's sitting in the conference room one day talking about 17,000 transactions.
yeah,
You still, and the challenge is, how do I find the young man or young woman who's doing spot loads or smaller things, any selling, whether you're working the carrier side or whatever, okay? You still need that 30 something person who's going to morph into enterprise or major account selling. And that is the single biggest thing I have already identified. In fact, I just had that phone call with a software company yesterday. You know, there's right about this. I said, all right, I just got a question. Okay. And it was, where's the next Claire coming from? It was, what? And Claire's a young woman. She's 37 years old who has been with these guys for 14 years. She started in customer service. And yeah, she's handling business that is worth tens of millions of dollars. And we just think, oh, well, it's always been Claire. And well, let's go back. Okay, what about the Claire that was hired out of the, you know, Oklahoma State University with a marketing degree and finance background? He did 2 summer internships with an oil company. And, we forget that person and we see that. So if any company looked out at their top people in their 30s, 40s, 50s, what was that person at 22, 23?
yeah,
And that's the single biggest thing that if, and there's some great stuff online. You can Google this. MIT has a wonderful white paper on it. If you Google the Wall Street Journal, okay, the gap for prepping, okay, those spaces, because you're not going to have AI take away everything.
yeah,
And but you're going to need a different type of person. And the skill set. So it's really tough to think about, oh, I'm hiring this 23-year-old, but you're trying to really say, right, I need this person who have the skill set of my 36-year-old or 37-year-old. I got to hire them now, and I got to figure out how to. And you're going to compress that. If I had Claire today at 23, it wouldn't take me 14 years to figure that skill set at 27.
Of course
At
not. And
37. Are you with me? I could
of
do it
course
in
not.
less than half the time.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, Jim, I've done your sales training before, a little bit. And are you still doing that? Are you still offering classes to people or
We are.
companies?
We do it all the time. We do it with the groups either through TIA or directly through me. So it's we ask people to contact us all the time for that.
Yeah, and I
To see what
found it
happens.
incredibly valuable, not just for me personally, even though I'm not a sales guy. It's good for me to see it as a guy who has salespeople working under him. Um, then for my team, really valuable as well, right? To like you
Well,
said,
thank you. I
learn to
appreciate that.
change the behavior, right? And not just push harder. Learn to change the behavior, and so I'm wondering for our viewers, how can they find you?
They can find me on LinkedIn, James Kinney, Kenny. It's Professor Emeritus of Marketing. So James Kinney, Ken, or they can contact TIA, the Transportation Emergency Association, and reach me through the education department. That's an easy way. So TIA.org. So Transportation Intermediaries Association. So either way, they can contact us. We'd love to help them, Alex, if we could.
Yeah,
Like we
I
did you
think
guys. It was a lot
I
of fun.
think
Well, thank you for the kind words. TIA appreciates it.
yeah, well, based on some of the prospecting I get, as a prospect, some of the sales efforts I get as a prospect, I think a lot of people need your help, Jim. And so, um, if you're wondering how can I change the behavior in the right way of my salespeople, get in touch with Jim Kinney. He's James Kinney on LinkedIn. He's obviously connected with me, so if you're following me, you can find him as one of my connections. And he does a tremendous job, and it's a great value as well. So, if you think your sales team might need help, Jim is the expert, especially in freight for this kind of thing. So get in touch with him. And Jim, one of the most fun conversations always when I get to talk to you. We got a free hour to do it a couple weeks ago, and now we got to do it again, and it's really always fun. So I really appreciate you coming on the No Show, and hope to have you again someday.
Well, I appreciate the friendship because I was a no guest. And Alex, you have a great company and you are far too modest about what you guys have achieved. So it's wonderful that we visit with you. So take care. Thank you very much.
Of course. Thank you, Jim.
Thank
Thanks.
you. Bye.